Well, earlier we talked about today's first budget vote, a Conservative sub-amendment that failed in the House. However, there are more budget votes to come, and the Green Party leader says she won't be supporting the government unless there are changes to the budget. Elizabeth May is joining me now from Parliament Hill. Miss May, good to speak with you again.
Good to talk to you, Andrew.
So let's start with this. What exact changes do you want to see?
Well, what we need to see from Mark Carney's government is some of the things that we thought he stood for during the election, such as climate action. Certainly from his history, writing the book Values, he gave a quite famous speech 10 years ago to a Lloyd's of London gathering, saying, that we'll face catastrophic damage to our planet unless we act. So the budget is really absolutely silent on climate action. It doesn't even mention the Paris Agreement, doesn't mention a commitment to our targets. It's very clear that we're very much off track, and that the Prime Minister has to say clearly that he is still committed to our legally binding targets. He says, I don't care about targets, I want results. Well, I'm sorry. Those results have to be in line with our international legally binding commitments to ensure that our children have a livable world. This is not a small or side peripheral issue in the life of a country. Canada's success rather depends on a livable planet. So we need to hear that from the Prime Minister. And right now, key climate programs are cut. They're on the chopping block floor at this point. And what we're hearing is, let's boost fossil fuel subsidies. That is not what I expected to see. So those things need to change.
You sat down with Prime Minister Mark Carney ahead of the budget. Was anything you raised with him included? You've gone through what you're opposed to, but was there anything that you raised that you saw in this budget?
Well, I have to say, I had a really good conversation with the Prime Minister. We've known each other a long time, and the only meeting we've had of any kind, we didn't even, other than a phone call on election night, since April 28th, we've spoken exactly once, and that was on October 2nd. Now, we had submitted extensive pre-budget recommendations in August. The Prime Minister and I didn't walk through those one at a time. We had a more I'd say high-level conversation. The things we talked about are not, in terms of specifics and things that I really pressed, no, they're not in the budget.
So I guess the follow-up question to that would be, since the budget was tabled on Tuesday afternoon, have you had any talks with the government about your vote?
Yes, I've had a couple of conversations with different ministers within the government, and I'm hoping to have a conversation with the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister, and I'm hoping they'll be open to making the kind of modifications that would mean I can vote yes.
So we've had one floor crossing this week from the Conservatives to the Liberals. Others have been rumored. It is possible you could end up holding the balance of power on this budget and ultimately being a deciding vote in whether the government falls. So if you had to choose right now between passing this budget and sending Canadians into another election, which way would you go?
Oh, those are impossible questions. I mean, what do you choose? I told the government House Leader Steve McKinnon when he, at one point, this was before I'd read the budget, before it had been tabled, and he said, well, you mean you'd vote for an election? I said, no, I wouldn't vote for an election. I don't want an election. But if your budget includes big increases and supporting the fossil fuel industry, supporting more emissions, I'm going to vote for my granddaughter's future. And that's not something, I'm not going to compromise on what future generations have to tolerate on this planet when we, in our generation, in our time, right now, have the opportunity to make the right choices. So I don't want an election, but I'm not going to abandon my grandchildren.
Do you think because of the current numbers, the Liberals now just a couple of seats short, that they are really interested in your vote specifically? I mean, you've mentioned some of the discussions you've had. What sense are you getting from them?
I'm not exactly certain, but I do get a sense that there's an openness to wanting to talk, to try to figure out if there's a way to make sure that I feel comfortable, that I'm prepared on scientific and moral grounds to vote for this budget. I mean, on economic grounds, this budget has a huge deficit. They didn't need to do that. I've suggested to them some of the things I pressed the most of the Prime Minister when we met were ways to increase government revenue so we could drive down the deficit. People don't necessarily know that during the election it was the Green Party platform that reduced the deficit more than any other party. The studies we asked the Parliamentary Budget Office to do on ideas we have that would work and not hurt Canadians in their pocketbook, those are still on the PBO website. People can look them up. We're very committed to a sustainable future for Canada. We're very committed to our economy surviving and thriving in spite of the erratic and illegal behaviors of Donald Trump. All of that said, you can't hold one against the other and say, if there's a risk of an election, will you vote in a way that creates an election? If the alternative is impossible to imagine that we abandon climate action when we're at the very point of, we're standing on the edge of too late, Andrew. I don't know how else to describe it. Climate science, the amount of greenhouse gases that are already in the atmosphere have baked in for our children a very difficult time. If we continue to allow greenhouse gases to expand and grow, we really have the risk of the loss of human civilization. When we are, as adults and reasonable people who are responsible in our actions, we can't choose to say, oh, it's hard doing stuff on climate now because what? Because Trump. That's not good enough.
Okay, one last question on this point. Given the importance, the rhetorical importance, we've heard from the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister talking about this as a generational budget, a budget to build Canada strong in this new era. Do you feel realistic at all that the government is actually open to changes, given the real importance that they've put into this document on so many fronts, not just climate, but also immigration, defense, infrastructure?
Look, those goals can be achieved, I think, on an economic basis as well. I think when you look at some of the economic analysis from those who are looking at this budget, it's a gamble. You don't know that if you hit the lowest marginal tax rate for foreign corporations and get in below the U.S., right? This is coming in the budget itself. It says we're going to beat Trump's big, beautiful bill with our productivity super deduction. It might not work. It's a gamble. So it's economically a gamble, it's a huge deficit, and things that could work better aren't in there. But again, I have a lot of sympathy for Prime Minister Carney. Negotiating with Trump is almost impossible. The man is, famously erratic and unpredictable, but we have to protect our own economy. We can build domestically. We can protect our natural resources with strategic reserves of our natural resources that we have pressed upon the Prime Minister. Look at these ideas and see if we can't protect our economy from the erratic behavior of Donald Trump, and at the same time not decide that it's a trade-off and our children's future go down the drain because we're distracted by something else.
Okay, one very last quick question for you. You've already said you won't lead the Green Party in the next federal election. Is your party then ready for an election if it comes in the immediate future?
Of course, I obviously have to lead the party into the next federal election if it happens tomorrow. I'm the leader of the party. But my intention very strongly is that, and certainly we hope that there won't be an imminent election. We hope that the government will, and that the Liberals will realize the opposition parties are open to negotiating. We're open to talking. We want, and I want to say we, I mean, I'm only one vote, but there are 7 NDP votes. I think they're open as well to talking. I won't speak for them, but there's an opportunity here for the Prime Minister to show some flexibility to make sure that I, as leader of the Green Party, and that others potentially in the House can vote for the budget. That's obviously our preference. We don't want the government to fall and to be, of course, even if the government falls, we're not necessarily thrown into an election. A new coalition of parties could go to the Governor General and say, look, we can hold the confidence of the House, even though the rookie Prime Minister blew it and lost confidence of the House. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's hope we don't have a confidence vote that fails, but it doesn't automatically plunge us into an election. We're a democracy of the Westminster parliamentary type, which means that we have a way to work together in Parliament to hold the confidence of the House and make sure we don't go to an election.
Okay, Green Party leader Elizabeth May, thanks for your time as always.
Thank you, Andrew.